Today is a good day. Today, I'm going to show you my online scrapbook that contains the history of travel and tourism in the different eras as well as the history of travel and tourism in the Philippines. First, why do we need to know the history of travel and tourism? The term hospitality predates the use of the word tourism. It is derived from the Latin word hospice, which encompasses the word host, guest, and stranger. The word tourism first appeared in an Oxford English dictionary in 1811. Other dictionaries suggest that it was derived from a Greek word for a tool used in describing a circle. In a sense, tourism intrinsically involves a circular itinerary where tourists return to their point of origin. Others also suggest that it came from the word Hebrew, which means Torah, which means studying, searching, and learning. Now, let us take a look at the status of the ancient days. Exploration and travel are essential to humans. People have been traveling even before the concept of tourism was developed. People in the past traveled only for business and religious purposes. Romans and Greeks were well-known traders in the past, and as their empire grew, travel became necessary for them. The improvement in their first-class roads, inns, and communications aided the Roman travelers. Next, the Appian Way. It is one of the best routes in Rome, the Appian Way. Perhaps it is the oldest road that still exists. It is one of the ancient Rome's most significant military and economic road. The Romans also employed relays of horses, and every 6 miles, a stable could be found where travelers could change horses. Because of this, distance of more than 100 miles could be reached in one day. Pilgrimage. Religious travels were in the form of pilgrimages to places worship. The cities of Rome and Jerusalem were the famous sites of pilgrims in the past. Pilgrimages were taken to fulfill a vow, as in case of illness or great danger or as retribution for sins. Next, let's take a look. Medieval period. The fall of the Roman Empire in the 5th century brought a decline in travel. Travel became difficult, dangerous, and demanding. Roads were not maintained, and it became unsafe for travelers. Thieves inflicted harm on those who attempt to travel. No one traveled for pleasure during this time. Only the pilgrims and crusaders traveled this time. Renaissance period. During the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, young aristocrat men who were aiming for a position in court were encouraged to travel within the continent to increase their knowledge. Gradually, the practice was adopted by other men on a lower scale. The education of gentlemen should be completed with a grand tour. That tour includes visiting different cultural centers on the continent for 2 years. To express an educational activity, the grand tour became more social business. Pleasure-seeking young men traveled predominantly in France and Italy to enjoy European cultures and social life. Venice, Florence, and Paris became the key attractions at that time. Grand Tour was institutionalized for the upper class in the late part of 18th century. So let's move to Industrial Revolution. Industrial Revolution brought significant changes in the type and scale of tourism development. Aside from technological changes, it brought social changes that made travel more desirable. The increase in productivity, job regularization, and growing urbanization give workers time and more motivation to go on holiday. People at this time usually go to the countryside or seashore. It led to the creation of working-class resorts near major industrial hubs. In the 19th century, the advancement of technology made travel more convenient, and in the earlier part of 19th century, the railway system and the steam power were introduced. This advancement in technology made travel more convenient and comfortable. The new means of transport increased transport carrying capacity and reduced travel costs. Thomas Cook. In 1841, Thomas Cook opened the first leisure travel agency, the Thomas Cook and Sons, who helped Britons improve their lives by seeing the world. His first excursion trip occurred in 1841 between Leicester and Loughborough, with 571 passengers provided with meals and entertained with brass music. And from 1855, Cook offered a guide vacation abroad. He catered mixed clientele from rulers, state, and royalties to average representative of the lower middle, and working classes. Picture is a circular note. In 1866, he introduced the circular notes, which were accepted in the banks, hotels, restaurants, and shops. This was in effect the first traveler checks. Considering his contribution, he was named the father of modern tourism. 20th century. During World War I, tourism became stagnant, but after the war, the demand for international travel increased and a large-scale migration occurred. New forms of mass communication such as the cinema, radio, and television have increased people's curiosity and broadened their knowledge and interest in travel. World War II led to an increase in travel interest influenced by the advancement in aircraft technology. Air travel became more comfortable and faster compared to the other forms of transport. In 1958, Boeing 707 jets was introduced, and the air travel for masses began, which brought a decline of sea travel. 21st century. At the start of the century, global events like September 11, 2001, World Trade Center, New York City bombing, the war in Iraq, terrorist attacks, and health scares hit a decline in international travel. It also indicates the decline in international tourist arrivals in the 2010, brought by the global economic crisis that started in 2008. So, let's move on to the origins of tourism in the Philippines. The first inhabitants of the country roamed around even before the Spaniard came. This was shown in the pieces of archaeological evidence. They traveled to trade, for diplomacy, or war. Spanish occupation. During the Spanish occupation, travels were limited only to education, employment, and religious pilgrimage. Only a few people can travel to a foreign country because it was expensive and time-consuming. For example, traveling to Spain could take 1 year via to Manila-Acapulco galleon trade route. In later part of 19th century, Spaniards introduced innovation such as railroads, electricity, and telegram. Manila was open to world trade, and non-Spanish business people, diplomats, and seamen began visiting the city. In 1889, Hotel de Oriente, the city's first deluxe hotel, was opened, but it was replaced with a more modern hotel during the American occupation. American occupation. During the celebration of American independence on July 4, 1912, the Americans opened the Manila Hotel, which became the city's landmark. So, let's take a look in the earliest tourism organization in the country. 1937. In 1937, the country's first private airport was established. It is where the country's first airline, the Philippine Airlines, took its first flight in 1941. During this time, the country's road system has not extensively developed, and only few places outside Manila such as Taal Volcano and Baguio were developed for tourism. In 1952, the country's first tourism association was organized, the Philippine Tourist and Travel Association, as well known as PTTA, association of all existing travel establishments that serves domestic and international travelers. The government recognized the potential of tourism and funded the association to promote the country's tourist industry. In 1956, the government through RA 1478 created the Board of Travel and Tourist Industry, once known BTTI. It was a policy-making body that supervises, regulates, and controls the tourist industry. In 1973, the BTTI was reorganized into the Ministry of Tourism, now known as the Department of Tourism. Awareness of tourism grew, and Filipinos saw a respectable career in tourism. In 1977, the University of the Philippines offered the first tourism degree course in the country. In 1974, the Department of Tourism hosted international conferences and sporting events such as the Miss Universe Beauty Pageant, the World Bank International Monetary Fund meeting, and the Ali Fraser Trela in Manila boxing match respectively. In 1989, the Department of Tourism launched its first promotional campaign with the slogan, Vista Island, Philippines. It shows the different countries' tourism slogans. In the 1990s, local civil aviation boosted the tourism in the country when budget airlines entered the business. More provincial airports were opened to international flights. This accelerated tourism in provinces, and Boracay Island became a famous international resort destination. In 2000, the celebration of a public holiday was moved to the nearest weekend, creating a 3-day holiday break or long weekends that gave Filipinos more time to travel around the country. Well, in 2010, tourism in the country faced three major crises. First was the criticism of the marketing campaign Pilipinas Kay Ganda. Many criticized the use of Filipino language in the slogan, as it might not be recognized in international markets, while others criticized the design for it resembles Poland Tourism Organization logo. The campaign was pulled out weeks after it was launched, and the tourism secretary was replaced. Secondly, all Philippine carriers were banned from flying over European airspace because they failed to meet the international safety standard. At the time, the Philippine Civil Aviation Authority cannot provide the necessary safety oversight. Dutch carrier KLM was the only airline that operated between Philippines and Europe. The ban limited the number of European visitors until it was lifted in 2015. And lastly, was the hostage-taking incident at the Quirino Grandstand, when a police officer held a busload of tourists from Hong Kong hostage. The mishandled rescue operation was broadcasted live around the world, and the reputation of Philippines suffered. To increase tourism statistics, a new marketing campaign was launched in 2012. Within weeks of its launch, the It's More Fun in the Philippines campaign was judged as one of the top 3 smartest campaigns by the Global Marketing Campaign Ranker. To maintain the momentum, the Department of Tourism continued its campaign with a Visit the Philippines year in 2015 and a Visit Philippines again in 2016 campaign. During that year, there was an 11.31% growth in tourist arrival. In 2019, the Department of Tourism, under the leadership of the Department of Tourism Secretary Bernadette Romulo Puyat, relaunched the It's More Fun in the Philippines and focused on promoting the country as a sustainable